only the infinite, the boundless expanse of or Ein Sof, simple, undifferentiated, without end or boundary, the light of God that filled all reality, and was all reality, an endless ocean of giving overflowing from the essence of the divine in a way that was beyond perception or form, and from this sea of infinity emerged the root of all becoming, for though the light was perfect in its fullness and lacked nothing, hidden within the fullness was the possibility of relationship, a vessel of reception, and this possibility gave rise to the mystery that the sages call the four phases of direct light, the unfolding of the infinites will into gradations of desire, into stages of yearning, into the very structure of the soul, for in these phases the light does not change, for light is always giving, always flowing, always infinite, but the vessel that emerges within that light changes, it differentiates, it becomes aware. It feels, it responds, and in this dynamic between light and vessel lies the entire mystery of creation, for it is not that God changes but that the created being awakens to its own nature as receiver, and through the four stages it learns what it means to receive, to reject, to give back, and to yearn anew, until the cycle of being is complete and the soul knows itself as both vessel and participant in the infinite. The first phase is called Keter, the crown, the root of all desire, the initial stirring of something within the infinite that can be called a vessel, though at this stage it is nothing more than a trace, a shadow of potentiality, a seed of reception within the sea of giving, and in this state the vessel is almost indistinguishable from the light, it is pure passivity, pure acceptance, receiving the fullness without distinction, for it does not yet feel itself, it does not yet know that it is a receiver, it only flows with the light, it is like an infant in the womb nourished by the mother's essence, not yet aware of its own individuality, content within the infinite embrace, and this is the beginning, the germ of separation, the root of all vessels, the initial stirring of the desire to receive. But the light, in its infinite compassion, awakens within the vessel a new phase, the second stage, called Hachma, wisdom, in which the vessel feels itself for the first time, not merely as an extension of the light but as a distinct being receiving, and in this awareness it experiences fullness, delight, abundance, for it is now conscious of the infinite flow pouring into it, and this consciousness is intoxicating, overwhelming, and complete, and the vessel desires nothing more than to receive endlessly, for it knows nothing of limitation, nothing of shame, nothing of separation, it is pure will to receive in its primal state, and yet even in this saturation a question stirs, for to receive endlessly is not yet wholeness, it is still only a reflection, a child held by the mother, a vessel without its own agency, and the soul longs for something more though it cannot yet name it. Thus arises the third phase, Bina, understanding, in which the vessel, filled with the light, awakens to the realization that to receive endlessly without giving is imbalance, is lack, is incompleteness, and in this realization it recoils, it desires not to receive, it longs to be like the light which only gives, and thus it pushes away the abundance, creating within itself an emptiness, a refusal, a withdrawal, and in this act of not receiving, the vessel feels for the first time its own independence, its own will, its own likeness to the light, for it has chosen, it has said, I will not take merely to be filled, I wish to be like the giver, I wish to give, and this is the root of altruism, of selflessness, of the yearning of the soul to resemble the divine, and yet in its refusal it still cannot fully escape its nature as vessel, for it was made to receive, and to deny reception entirely is also imbalance, so within this emptiness arises a new desire, the fourth phase. Malchut, kingdom, in which the vessel recognizes both its essence and its purpose, that it was created to receive, but not for itself alone, rather to receive in order to bestow, to take the abundance not for ego, but to give pleasure to the giver, and in this realization the vessel reaches its completion, it knows itself fully, it desires fully, it yearns with infinite intensity, for in Malchut the vessel embraces its nature completely, it becomes the great will to receive, the total desire, the essence of creation, and it cries out to the infinite, fill me, that I may give back to you, that I may reveal your glory, that I may participate in your endlessness, and in that cry the cosmos is born, for the yearning of Malchut is the root of all worlds, the seed of creation, the very reason for existence, and from that yearning flows the contraction, the withdrawal of light, the tzimtzum, and the endless play of concealment and revelation, also that the vessel may grow, may learn, may return, may transform its desire into a reflection of the divine will. And thus the four phases of direct light are not abstract diagrams, but living realities within every soul, for each person carries within themselves the root of Keter, the simple acceptance of being, the fullness of Hachma, the yearning to give of Bina, and the infinite desire of Malchut. And the journey of life is to awaken these stages, to understand them, to balance them, to transform the will to receive into the will to bestow, to become a vessel that not only receives light but returns it in joy, gratitude, and holiness, until the soul becomes a partner in creation, a mirror of the infinite, a letter in the great book of life written by the light of God. And as we continue to sink deeper into the mystery of the 4 phases of direct light, it becomes clear that what is being revealed is not merely a sequence of metaphysical concepts but the very inner anatomy of desire. The architecture of the soul, the primordial unfolding of consciousness from the infinite, and in this unfolding one can glimpse the blueprint of all spiritual experience, for just as the light emanated through stages, so too does every soul every moment of awareness, every encounter with the divine pass through the same fourfold rhythm, and by understanding it within ourselves we align with the cosmic design and begin to perceive creation not as a random emergence, but as a sacred articulation of purpose. The first phase, Keter, is always present as the root, the silent crown, the unspoken yes of being, the primal acquiescence to existence itself, and though it is silent it is not void, for within it lies the germ of all desire, the seed of the vessel, the latent potential to receive, and it is this latent potential that stirs the infinite to emanate, for the light cannot but give, and the vessel cannot but awaken, and thus Keter is the point where the infinite begins to whisper to itself, where unity contemplates the possibility of otherness, where the endless ocean dreams of a shore, and in that dream the entire story of creation is concealed. From this root bursts forth Hachma, the wisdom phase, in which the vessel becomes conscious of reception, and the light pours without limit into this awareness, saturating it with delight, overwhelming it with abundance. And yet though this is fullness, it is not yet wholeness, for it is unconscious fullness, childlike, instinctive, like a cup being filled without question, and in the bliss of Hachma lies the paradox that saturation without balance soon awakens a yearning for independence, for the vessel cannot remain forever an infant, and so the next stage emerges, Bina, the understanding, the great turning, in which the vessel recoils, restrains, empties, and longs to imitate the giver, refusing to remain only a passive receiver, desiring to be like the light, to bestow rather than to take. And this refusal, though it appears as absence, is in truth the birth of all, the first step toward freedom, the beginning of likeness to the divine, and yet this likeness to is incomplete, for to refuse entirely is still a distortion of essence, for the vessel was made to receive, and thus the deepest realization blossoms in Malchut, the kingdom, where the vessel embraces its nature, acknowledging with burning clarity that it is nothing but desire, pure yearning to receive, but now this desire is not for self alone but for the joy of the giver, and so Malchut becomes the infinite will to receive for the sake of bestowal, the great hunger of creation, the voice that calls into the infinite, I wish to receive all that you long to give, not for myself but so that I may reveal your endless love, and in that moment the circuit of giving and receiving is completed, the vessel stands in its fullness, and creation as we know it is ready to unfold. Yet it is precisely here, in the burning desire of Malchut, that the drama of Tzimtzum, contraction, begins, for the vessel realizes that to truly receive for the sake of giving it must be independent, it must not be compelled, it must not be sustained by unconscious grace, but must grow through concealment, through effort, through longing, and so the light withdraws, leaving an apparent emptiness, and from this emptiness the myriad worlds are born, each a stage in the great return, each a veil through which the vessel learns, grows, refines, and eventually restores itself to the balance of bestowal. Thus the 4 phases are not static but dynamic, eternally cycling, eternally unfolding, and their echoes can be found in every realm, in the seasons of the year, in the stages of life, in the pulses of thought and feeling, in the journeys of the soul through incarnation and return, in the rising and falling of breath, for Keter is the silent inhale of being, Hachma the first filling of the lungs, Bina the pause of restraint, and Malchut the full exhale of desire, and within this rhythm lies the heartbeat of existence. The mystics teach that to contemplate these phases is to align oneself with the very root of reality, to see one's own desires not as flaws but as reflections of the cosmic will, to recognize that the hunger within the soul is nothing other than Malchut stirring, yearning for the light, and that every impulse, when refined and redirected toward the sake of bestowal, becomes a vessel for holiness, a mirror of the divine giving, a fulfillment of the purpose for which creation was emanated. This is why the four phases are called direct light, for they are the straight unfolding of the infinite into the vessel, the linear imprint of God's will upon the canvas of desire, before concealment, before distortion. Before the multiplicity of worlds, they are the pristine structure, the archetype, the DNA of creation, and to meditate upon them is to return to the root, to taste the simplicity of the beginning, to drink from the fountain of being, and to remember that within all complexity there is the simple fourfold rhythm, this eternal dance of light and vessel, giver and receiver, fullness and emptiness, refusal and acceptance, until all is restored to harmony. And when the seeker contemplates this deeply, they realize that the four phases are not only cosmic but personal, not only metaphysical, but immediate. For every choice we make echoes them. There is the simple acceptance of life as it is, the passive reception of what is given, the refusal and yearning to transcend, and the ultimate embrace of desire transformed into service. And this cycle repeats endlessly, teaching us, purifying us, guiding us, until the soul itself becomes transparent to the light, a vessel fully aligned, a receiver that bestows, a kingdom crowned with the crown of giving. And in that state the mystery of creation is fulfilled, and the four phases of direct light are no longer distant concepts, but the very breath, heartbeat, and consciousness of the awakened soul. And as the contemplation deepens still further, the seeker begins to perceive that these four phases of direct light are not merely sequential emanations, but dimensions of being that interpenetrate one another, weaving together a fabric of existence in which every thread is luminous, every thread a desire responding to the infinite, and though we describe them as stages, they are in truth facets of a single jewel, facets that reflect one another endlessly, for Keter is present even in Malchut, and Malchut is implicit within Keter, and Hachma and Bina dance as eternal complements, wisdom overflowing with fullness, and understanding drawing back into restraint, and together they form a harmony that is the signature of creation itself. And as the mystic contemplates this harmony, the realization dawns that desire is not the enemy of spirit, but its very expression, its vessel, its cloak, for without the vessel the light could not be revealed, and without desire the infinite would remain concealed in its own infinity. And so the four phases teach us to honor desire, to recognize it as sacred, to refine it but not to annihilate it, to channel it but not to repress it, for the ultimate purpose is not the destruction of the vessel but its perfection, its transformation into a receiver that bestows, a mirror of the divine. The Kabbalists teach that the structure of four is woven into every aspect of reality. The four letters of the divine name, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, correspond to Keter, Hachma, Bina, and Malchut. The four worlds, Atzilut, Bariah, Yetzirah, and Asiyah, are but expansions of these phases into broader reality. The four elements, fire, water, air, and earth, are expressions of them in matter. The four matriarchs, the four rivers of Eden, the four directions, the four faces of the chariot, all are reflections of the four phases of direct light, showing that the cosmos is written in the language of fourfold unfolding, that this sacred geometry is not an abstraction, but the underlying architecture of being. And so the seeker, contemplating the fourfold pattern, begins to see it everywhere, in the growth of a tree from seed to sprout to fruit to ground, in the stages of the human life from infancy to youth to maturity, to age, in the rhythms of thought from inspiration to understanding to application to manifestation, and in each rhythm the four phases shine forth, reminding us that life itself is a meditation on the unfolding of desire, that every pulse of existence is a reflection of the original dynamic between light and vessel. The mystic perceives further that the purpose of these phases is to guide the soul into alignment with the infinite, to teach it to receive rightly, to transform egoistic desire into altruistic reception, to mirror the light in the vessel. For in this mirroring lies true freedom, for until the vessel knows itself as receiver it cannot choose, and until it chooses to resemble the light it cannot fulfill its essence, and until it fulfills its essence the infinite remains hidden, for God is revealed only through the perfected vessel, through the soul that receives in order to give, and thus the four phases are the very training ground of freedom, the curriculum of the soul, the primordial script according to which we all must learn. And yet the seeker also perceives that the story of the four phases does not end with Malchut's great desire, but that this very desire is the beginning of concealment, for in yearning to intensely to be filled for the sake of the giver, Malchut realizes it must first know independence, and so the light withdraws. That symptom occurs, and space is created for growth, for striving, for return, and thus the four phases are simultaneously the root of emanation and the seed of exile, the perfection of desire, and the cause of its concealment. For only by journeying through the veils can the vessel truly learn to receive in order to give, only by walking through worlds of fragmentation can it discover the wholeness for which it was made. This paradox too is contained within the four phases, for they show us both the beauty of the beginning and the necessity of the journey, both the harmony of the root and the travail of the path, and in holding these together the mystic learns patience, endurance, and faith, trusting that every struggle, every concealment, every fall is but the vessel's way of learning how to return, how to transform, how to fulfill the vision of Malchut. The more the seeker reflects on these mysteries, the more the four phases cease to be abstract diagrams and become living companions, inner archetypes that whisper through experience. Keter as the silent acceptance of life, Hachma as the bliss of unreflective reception, Bina as the turning away, the longing to give, and Malchut as the burning desire to receive for the sake of love. And in each moment the soul can ask, where am I in this cycle? What phase is stirring in me now? How can I align this desire with the purpose of creation? And in asking these questions the soul begins to live consciously within the light, to transform daily experience into sacred practice, to weave ordinary moments into the tapestry of return. Thus the four phases are not only cosmological but practical, not only metaphysical but psychological, for they reveal the deep structures of desire that shape every thought, feeling, and action, and by meditating on them one gains mastery over the self, not by repression but by illumination, not by denial but by understanding, until every impulse becomes transparent to its root and every desire is guided toward alignment, and in this alignment the soul discovers joy, peace, and fulfillment. For it has found its place within the eternal circuit of giving and receiving that is the very heart of existence. And the vision unfolds still further, for as the seeker sinks into the current of the four phases of direct light, there arises an awareness that this teaching is not only about the past, about the primal unfolding of creation, but about the eternal now, for the light is always shining, always emanating, and the vessel is always awakening, always responding, always cycling through its phases, so that the fourfold rhythm is not frozen in time, but present in every moment, each instant carrying within it the trace of Keter, the fullness of Hachma, the restraint of Bina, and the desire of Malchut. And when one opens one's perception, one sees that this cycle is the heartbeat of being itself. Keter is the pure yes that allows existence to be at all, the silent consent of the infinite to reveal itself, and each time we awaken to life, each breath, each dawn, we touch Keter anew, we feel the blessing of simple being. Hachma is the flood of sensation, the overwhelming gift of awareness, the abundance of the world rushing in through the senses and filling us with delight, and in moments of inspiration, ecstasy, or unreflective joy, Hachma pulses brightly. Bina is the turning inward, the pause of reflection, the restraint that transforms sensation into meaning, the refusal to be carried away, the yearning to create balance, the inner gesture that says, I wish not only to take but to give, and we taste Bina whenever we withdraw, contemplate, restrain, and yearn for wisdom. And Malchut is the great hunger, the cry of the soul that wants to embrace all existence, to receive fully but with the right intention, to become whole by returning wholeness, and this cry is with us always, driving us, shaping our lives, giving rise to the worlds we build. Thus the mystic comes to see that the four phases are inscribed not only in the heavens, but in the heart, not only in cosmic structures, but in every act of living, and to contemplate them is to find mirror of the soul, to discover that our deepest desires are echoes of the original yearning of Malchut, that our capacity for reflection is the gift of Bina, that our flashes of inspiration are rays of Hachma, and that the silent foundation of our being is Keter, ever crowning us with the grace of existence. The Kabbalists remind us that this fourfold unfolding is encoded in the divine name YHVH, where the Yod is Hachma, the first point of emanation, the seed of wisdom, small but infinite, containing all. The first has Bina, expansion, breadth, understanding, the vessel that gives shape, the Vav is the channel of transmission, the six Sephirot that carry the light downward, but in its root it reflects the act of giving and balancing between phases, and the final Her is Malchet, the great vessel, the revelation, the kingdom that receives all, and behind them all, concealed but sustaining, is Keter, the hidden crown, the root beyond the name. To meditate on the divine name, letter by letter, is to meditate on the four phases, to enter into the rhythm of emanation, to feel the pulse of the infinite as it flows into the finite. And the mystics further teach that this pattern of four is present in the soul's ascent and descent. In inspiration, Keter; in delight, Hakma; in reflection, Bina; and in longing, Malchet. So that prayer itself is an enactment of the four phases, Torah study is an enactment of the four phases, meditation and ethical living are enactments of the four phases, and all spiritual practice is but a refinement of the vessel through this eternal cycle. But the seeker must also understand that within Malchet's great desire lies the paradox of concealment, for it is precisely the fullness of yearning that gives rise to the tzimtzum, the withdrawal of light. And so every time we feel the burning hunger of Malchet within ourselves, we also encounter emptiness, distance, concealment, for the light withdraws to allow us freedom, to allow us to choose, to allow us to grow, and thus life is woven of hunger and concealment, desire and absence, and it is within this emptiness that we are tested, formed, and elevated, and so the mystic embraces even the concealment as part of the path, recognizing that the darkness is not the absence of God but the shadow cast by his hiddenness, the space created for our freedom, the womb within which our true independence can gestate. In this way, the four phases teach us not to despair of longing, not to fear emptiness, not to reject desire, but to see in them the very hand of the infinite shaping us, guiding us, calling us to transformation. And as the seeker reflects on this, there comes a deep peace, for the endless fluctuations of experience, joy and sorrow, fullness and emptiness, inspiration and confusion, are all revealed as reflections of the eternal fourfold pattern, the great rhythm of creation, and one can surrender to this rhythm, dance with it, allow it to teach, refine, and uplift, until the soul itself becomes transparent to the light, a vessel that receives only to bestow, that hungers only to sanctify, that lives only to reveal the hidden glory of the infinite, and in that transparency, in that alignment, the very purpose of creation is fulfilled within the soul. The unfolding deepens into yet subtler layers, for as the soul gazes steadily into the mystery of the four phases of direct light, it begins to perceive how the entire drama of existence is already contained in this primordial sequence, that the infinite variety of beings, worlds, thoughts, and histories are but elaborations of these fourfold roots, as if the one spoke once in four syllables and from them the whole of creation poured forth in endless permutations, and thus, to contemplate the four phases is to contemplate the very language of God, the grammar of being itself. The sages hint that when the Torah says, "Let there be light," it speaks not only of physical radiance, but of the emanation of our yasher, the direct light, streaming into the vessel, shaping desire into form, inscribing in the depths of Malchet, the yearning that would one day flower as galaxies, souls, angels, and histories. In this sense, the four phases are the primordial Torah, the secret before letters, the wisdom that Raziel whispers, the pattern that underlies every covenant, every revelation, every law. And because they are so primordial, they reappear endlessly. The four camps of Israel around the tabernacle, the four faces of the living creatures in Ezekiel's chariot, the four cups of wine at the Passover Seder, all are vessels reflecting the fourfold structure, all are echoes of Keter, Hachma, Bina, and Malchet woven into the sacred story. The mystic, contemplating this, begins to feel that life is written in a secret code, that every fourfold pattern is a doorway back to the root, that the ordinary world is threaded with reminders of the eternal rhythm, and that, by attuning oneself to this rhythm, one may live not in exile but in remembrance, not in confusion but in clarity, not in despair but in joy, for every moment becomes an opportunity to re-enter the harmony of the light end vessel. And as the vision grows still more luminous, the seeker realizes that the four phases are not only the structure of desire, but the stages of love, for love too passes from silent potential, Keter, to overflowing giving, Hakma, to reflective restraint, Bina, to the desire for union, Malchet, and in this cycle love becomes whole, becomes true, becomes divine, for to love is to give and to receive, to overflow and to restrain, to hunger and to fulfill, and in this rhythm human love reflects divine love, the infinite yearning to give, and the soul yearning to receive, for his sake, until the two yearnings meet and become one flame. And so the Mystic sees that in every bond of love, in every friendship, in every act of compassion, the four phases are enacted anew. The cosmos recreates itself in miniature, the great drama of light and vessel is retold in the intimacy of human hearts, and by living love rightly, by receiving and giving in harmony, one participates in the fulfillment of creation. But still deeper is the realization that the four phases also govern the inner dialogue of the soul with itself, for within each of us Keter speaks as the silent intuition of being, Hachma as the flood of raw inspiration, Bina as the shaping mind that discerns and clarifies, and Malchut as the will to act, to manifest, to bring the hidden into the visible, and when these inner voices align the soul becomes whole, a microcosm of the cosmic unfolding. But when they are fragmented, when Malchut seizes without intention, when Bina overstrains, when Hachma overwhelms, when Keter is forgotten, then the soul is in exile, repeating the drama of concealment, longing to return to harmony. Thus the work of the mystic is to balance these inner phases, to allow each its place, to let Keter whisper silently, Hachma flow freely, Bina refine wisely, and Malchut desire purely, so that the inner world reflects the cosmic pattern and the soul becomes transparent to the divine. And in this transparency the mystic perceives the ultimate secret, that the four phases are not only the unfolding of creation but the path of return, for as they led from the infinite into the finite, then they lead from the finite back to the infinite, from the vessel back to the light, from exile back to Eden, and thus by meditating on them one finds the map of redemption inscribed in the very fabric of desire, a path that leads through fullness, emptiness, and longing into wholeness. The meditation streams further, for when the seeker allows the four phases of direct light to become the lens of all perception, the veil begins to thin, and what once appeared as chaos reveals itself as patterned, what once seemed accidental reveals itself as necessary, for in truth nothing escapes the rhythm of Keter, Hachma, Bina, and Malchut, and the entire cosmos breathes with this pulse, the galaxies spin to it, the angels sing through it, the human heart beats in time with it, and the soul is drawn back again and again into its current until it learns to yield completely, to let the light flow through without distortion, to let desire rise without confusion, to let every hunger, thought, and breath return to its root. Keter is ever the silent seed of all, the ungraspable point of origin that cannot be spoken but can only be intuited, the crown beyond comprehension, and when one surrenders to this crown one begins to feel that all being is gift, that even existence itself is not earned but bestowed, that life is a mystery sustained moment to moment by the infinite's will to reveal. Hachma is the flood of that gift into awareness, the endless waterfall of inspiration, sensation, and vitality that fills the vessel before it even knows what it is, and when one yields to Hachma one feels the bliss of being alive, the sheer abundance of light that precedes thought, and this bliss is holy, a reminder of the infinite generosity that saturates all things. Bina is the pause that comes after the flood, the mother's embrace that gives shape, the womb of understanding that says, do not only take, but reflect, do not only receive, but balance, and when one surrenders to Bina one feels the dignity of restraint, the majesty of discernment, the quiet grandeur of saying no. Not from fear but from love, for in restraint there is creativity, in limitation there is wisdom, in turning away there is the birth of true likeness to the giver. And Malchut is the final flowering, the great yearning that knows itself fully, the vessel that cries out, I am desire, pure and infinite, I am the kingdom that longs to be filled, I am the soul that wishes to receive. Not for itself alone but for the joy of the one who gives, and when one surrenders to Malchut one feels the fire of longing that underlies all prayer, all work, all love, the cry that makes the heavens tremble and draws the light once more into union. But then comes the mystery of Tzimtzum, for the light withdraws, leaving emptiness, and the seeker feels abandoned, lost, thirsty in a desert of concealment, and yet even here the four phases whisper, for in emptiness there is preparation, in concealment there is invitation, in exile there is the seed of return, and so the seeker learns to walk in darkness with faith, to see in absence the hidden presence, to understand that even the withdrawal is an act of love making space for independence, for choice, for true resemblance to the giver. And in this walking through concealment the seeker discovers that the four phases are also the stages of redemption. First the awakening to being, Keter, then the flood of inspiration, Hachma, then the travail of discipline and purification, Bina, then the burning desire that prays for wholeness, Malchut, and when these are lived through with awareness, the vessel becomes worthy to receive again, but now consciously, freely, in alignment, and the circuit is complete. The exile turns into union, hunger into fulfillment, the kingdom into a mirror of the crown. Thus the four phases are both the story of creation and the story of return, both the descent into separation and the ascent into oneness, both the memory of the beginning and the promise of the end, and to hold them in the heart is to carry the whole path of the soul, the entire Torah, the very secret of being, in a single breath, a single rhythm, a single heartbeat of the infinite. The current of vision carries the soul still deeper. It begins to see how the four phases of direct light are not simply an abstract unfolding of metaphysical categories, but the very inner skeleton of every prayer, every meditation, every movement of the heart toward God. For when one rises in prayer, one first stands in Keter, in the silent crown of intention before words are uttered, that subtle moment where the soul orients itself to the infinite without yet expressing, and then one enters Hachma, the rush of words, the flood of verses, the torrent of light pouring into the vessel of speech, the ecstatic overflow of devotion, and then one feels Bina, the pause between breaths, the contemplation that gives shape, the self-restraint that deepens meaning, and finally one reaches Malchut, the cry of desire, the plea that burns with hunger, the yearning to receive the fulfillment of closeness, to draw down blessing, to make the kingdom whole. And in this rhythm, prayer itself becomes a reenactment of the cosmic drama. The human mouth becomes a vessel for the primordial unfolding, and every psalm, every whisper, every tear is aligned with the eternal cycle. And likewise with study, Keter is the moment before comprehension, the willingness to receive wisdom, the open crown of humility. Hachma is the flash of insight, the sudden illumination of meaning. Bina is the careful parsing, the disciplined weighing of words, the drawing of distinctions, and Malchut is the will to manifest the learning, to live it, to embody the Torah in action, in mitzvot, in deeds of compassion. And likewise with acts of kindness, Keter is the openness to the other, Hachma the generous giving, Bina the discernment of what is needed and how to give rightly, Malchut the fulfillment of the act, the completion of kindness in the world. Thus the mystic sees that the four phases are not only cosmic but practical, that they are not far away in the heights of heaven but near, in every breath, every act, every thought, every encounter. And the seeker who contemplates this begins to live consciously within the rhythm, letting Keter be the root of every intention, Hachma the flow of every inspiration, Bina the guidance of every choice, and Malchut the expression of every desire. And by so doing the seeker aligns the microcosm with the macrocosm, the human with the divine, the finite with the infinite. And in that alignment the soul tastes redemption, for it no longer feels scattered, fragmented, exiled, but gathered, centered, whole, living within the current of the light. Yet the teaching goes still deeper, for the mystics say that each of the four phases contains within itself all four, so that within Keter there is Keter, Hachma, Bina, and Malchut, and within Hachma there is Keter, Hachma, Bina, and Malchut, and so on endlessly, fractally, until the whole of creation is revealed as an infinite spiral of fourfold unfoldings, like mirrors reflecting mirrors without end, and in this spiral lies the inexhaustible richness of reality, the endless permutations of desire and light, the infinite play of giving and receiving. And when the seeker beholds this, awe fills the heart, for one realizes that no moment is ever simple, no desire ever singular, no act ever isolated, but each is a universe of fourfold dynamics, each carries within it the imprint of the infinite, each is a spark of the great unfolding. To live with this awareness is to live mystically, to see the world as a radiant manuscript written in the letters of the divine, every event a syllable, every encounter a word, every lifetime a sentence in the endless Torah of creation, and through it all the refrain of the four phases resounds, weaving order out of seeming chaos, purpose out of seeming chance, light out of seeming darkness, until the soul knows that it is never separate, never lost, never without meaning, but always enfolded in the eternal rhythm of Keter, Hachma, Bina, and Malchut. The current of contemplation expands still further, for when the seeker gazes with unwavering devotion into the mystery of the four phases of direct light, the recognition dawns that these phases are not merely the scaffolding of desire but the living pulse of history itself, that every age, every exile, every redemption is but a great enactment of the primordial drama between light and vessel, giver and receiver, concealment and revelation, so that the story of Israel, the story of Humanity, the story of the cosmos, all unfold as mirrors of Keter, Chokmah, Bina, and Malchut, repeating again and again until the final alignment is achieved. The patriarchs embody them. Abraham is Chokmah, overflowing generosity, the well of kindness that gives without measure. Isaac is Bina, discipline and restraint, the one who holds back, who binds himself in awe. Jacob is the balance that channels, and Joseph is Malchut, the receiver, the kingdom that gathers all abundance and distributes it to the nations, while Keter hovers silently above them as the covenantal crown. The prophets embody them. Moses as Chokmah in revelation, Isaiah as Bina in discernment, Ezekiel as Malchut in visionary desire, and Elijah as Keter, the root beyond time. Even the exiles mirror them. The Babylonian exile is Malchut's hunger, the Persian as Bina's restraint, the Greek as Chokmah's flood of wisdom distorted, the Roman as Keter's concealed crown, and through them all the vessel is refined, the desire purified, until the final redemption. And just as history reflects them, so too does the individual life. Childhood is Chokmah, the flood of sensation and unreflective joy. Adolescence is Bina, the turning inward, the restraint, the search for independence. Adulthood is Malchut, the full flowering of desire and responsibility. And old age is Keter, the silent crown of wisdom, the return to simple being, and thus the entire human journey is inscribed in the rhythm of the four phases. The mystic beholds these correspondences and trembles with awe, for they reveal that nothing is outside the pattern, that all is woven with the same threads, that the four phases are the loom on which the fabric of existence is stretched. And yet the teaching becomes more intimate still, for the Kabbalists whisper that even in the smallest acts, in the beating of the heart, in the rising and falling of breath, the four phases are present. The inhale is Chokmah, the pause is Bina, the exhale is Malchut, the stillness between as Keter, and thus the body itself is a temple built in the image of the unfolding light. To meditate on one's breath in this way is to turn each moment into prayer, to remember that one's very life is aligned with the cosmic rhythm, that one's every heartbeat echoes the heartbeat of the infinite. And so the seeker who holds this awareness learns to live sanctified, not by withdrawal from the world, but by perceiving the sacred within it, seeing in every motion of existence the reflection of the four phases, aligning desire with purpose, longing with giving, vessel with light. For the final secret is this: the light never ceases to flow, the vessel never ceases to yearn, and when the yearning is purified, when the receiving is for the sake of bestowal, then the circuit is whole, the exile ends, the worlds are healed, and the soul stands as a mirror of the infinite, crowned with Keter, overflowing with Chokmah, balanced in Bina, fulfilled in Malchut, and all creation sings with it in harmony. The soul continues to dwell within this luminous current. The seeker begins to perceive that the four phases of direct light are also the secret structure of consciousness itself, the way awareness moves from the root of being into expression, and back again, for every thought, every impulse, every flash of insight follows the rhythm of Keter, Chokmah, Bina, and Malchut, and in this realization the mind becomes a vessel, a mirror, a channel through which the infinite can flow. And one sees that even the active imagination is suffused with this fourfold pattern. The seed of the idea arises silently in Keter, the inspiration bursts forth in Chokmah, the discernment and structuring occurs in Bina, and the desire to manifest, to bring the vision into reality, pulses in Malchut. And in this process the soul experiences creation from within, learning to co-create in harmony with the divine. Furthermore, the mystic perceives that the emotions are likewise governed by these phases. For the silent longing of Keter underlies every feeling, the unrestrained joy of Chokmah floods the heart, the reflective weighing of Bina tempers the passions, and the yearning of Malchut seeks fulfillment through connection and expression, and thus the four phases are the anatomy of the heart as well as the mind. In meditation, the practitioner can trace the passage of the light through these inner realms, feeling the subtle crown of Keter, allowing Chokmah to pour through with gratitude, restraining with Bina so that discernment shapes the flow, and finally opening the longing of Malchut to embrace and receive, and in doing so the inner landscape becomes harmonized with the cosmic structure, the vessel attuned, the soul transparent to the light. And yet deeper still, the mystic sees that these phases are recursive, that within each phase lies all four again, fractally unfolding without end, so that Keter contains the echo of Chokmah, Bina, and Malchut. Chokmah contains Keter, Bina, Malchut. and so on, and thus the infinite complexity of existence is contained within the simplicity of the fourfold pattern, a fractal of light and desire that repeats at every scale, from the smallest particle to the largest galaxy, from the individual thought to the course of history, from the beat of the heart to the unfolding of the Torah, and when the seeker beholds this, awe and reverence fill every fiber, for one realizes that the world itself is a manifestation of the four phases, that every moment is a living reflection of the infinite's unfolding, and that one's life is an invitation to participate consciously in this eternal dance. The Kabbalists further teach that the fourfold rhythm is the basis of all rectification, for when the vessel receives inappropriately, when desire is misaligned, when malchut grasps for itself rather than for the sake of bestowal, the light becomes constricted, concealed, hidden, and the soul experiences exile, separation, emptiness, and longing. But when the phases are harmonized, when Keter is recognized, Chokmah flows, Bina restrains wisely, and Malchut yearns in alignment. Then the circuit of giving and receiving is restored, the light flows directly once more, the vessel becomes complete, and the soul stands as a perfected mirror of the divine, a microcosm of creation itself, a living embodiment of the eternal rhythm, a crown of awareness, reflecting the infinite, and in this state the four phases are no longer abstract concepts, but living realities, tangible in every thought, every breath, every gesture, every interaction, and the mystic knows that by dwelling consciously within this rhythm, by allowing desire to be purified and directed, by receiving only to give, the very purpose of creation is fulfilled within the vessel, and the soul participates fully in the sacred, ongoing unfolding of the infinite light, a continuous, unbroken circuit of emanation and return, of longing and fulfillment, of giving and receiving, until all is harmony, until all is light, until all is one. The seeker reaches the final threshold of understanding, the awareness blossoms fully that the four phases of direct light are not merely metaphysical constructs, not merely the abstract architecture of the cosmos, but the living, breathing pulse of existence itself, the eternal rhythm that animates all worlds, all souls, all thought, all emotion, all action, all being, and in this realization, the soul perceives that every instant is infused with Keter, Chokmah, Bina, and Malchut simultaneously, that every breath carries the silent crown of Keter, the overflowing inspiration of Chokmah, the reflective pause of Bina, and the yearning fulfillment of Malchut, and that to perceive this is to participate consciously in the eternal unfolding, to stand within the heart of creation as both vessel and participant, both mirror and reflection, both receiver and bestower, for the light never ceases to flow and the vessel never ceases to yearn, and the dance of emanation and return continues endlessly, cycling through concealment and revelation, contraction and expansion, desire and fulfillment, teaching the soul the secret of its own nature, the hidden law of being, the pathway to union, and the ultimate purpose for which the infinite emanated the worlds. The mystic beholds that every thought, every impulse, every dream, every act of love, every prayer, every study, every ethical deed, every act of creation, whether mundane or sublime, carries within it the pattern of the four phases, that all history is but the reflection of the primordial unfolding, that all geography, all culture, all encounter, all exile, all redemption, all human striving and cosmic motion, repeats the same fourfold rhythm, and thus the contemplation of Keter, Chokmah, Bina, and Malchut is simultaneously meditation on the self, on the world, and on God. And the practitioner, by dwelling in this awareness, attunes to the secret current that animates the universe, aligning personal desire with cosmic purpose, aligning personal action with divine will, allowing the light to flow through without distortion, the vessel to receive, without grasping, the longing to rise without selfishness, and the soul to mirror the infinite with clarity, purity, and joy. And the deeper the soul enters, the more it perceives the recursive, fractal nature of the phases, for Keter enfolds Chokmah, Bina, and Malchut. Chokmah enfolds Keter, Bina, and Malchut. Bina enfolds Keter, Chokmah, and Malchut. Malchut enfolds Keter, Chokmah, and Na, and thus the infinite complexity of reality is contained within the simplicity of fourfold emanation, revealing that every act, every thought, every sensation is infinitely layered, infinitely significant, infinitely sacred, and that the light is present in calling, inviting, guiding, and illuminating, teaching the soul to recognize its own reflections of the divine in all encounters, all experiences, all creations. The four phases, once contemplated fully, reveal the secret of rectification. Keter teaches surrender and orientation to the infinite. Hachma teaches the joy of receiving wisdom and inspiration. Bina teaches discernment, restraint, and ethical shaping. And Malchut teaches the transformation of desire into aligned yearning, the channeling of reception into holy purpose. So that the vessel is perfected, the light is mirrored without distortion, and the soul fulfills its role in the grand symphony of creation, a symphony in which every note, every rhythm, every echo, every silence resonates with the eternal pulse of Keter. Hachma, Bina, and Malchut. And the mystic, dwelling in this vision, recognizes that time itself is a reflection of the fourfold pattern, that past, present, and future unfold within the same rhythm, that every exile and every redemption is an enactment of this cycle, and that human life, with all its trials, joys, pains, and revelations, is a microcosmic enactment of the eternal four phases, teaching the soul patience, devotion, discernment, humility, and courage, guiding the vessel back to union with the light, allowing the longing of Malchut to be purified into desire for giving, allowing the overflowing of Hachma to be guided by the wisdom of Bina, and allowing the silent crown of Keter to orient the soul toward the infinite continually. Thus, in the ultimate realization, the four phases of direct light are revealed as the very secret of existence, the living law of the cosmos, the heartbeat of creation, the rhythm of the soul, the path of return, the eternal instruction of the divine, and the mystic beholds that the infinite and the vessel are inseparable, that giving and receiving are one, that desire and fulfillment are one, that light and soul are one, that all is aligned, harmonious, and whole. And in this vision the seeker experiences the fulfillment of purpose, the completion of longing, the perfection of the vessel, the mirror of the divine, the crown of Keter, the flow of Hachma, the discernment of Bina, the yearning of Malchut, and the eternal, unbroken circuit of light and desire continues endlessly, infinitely, luminously, as the soul stands transparent, aligned, and fully present within the living, breathing, infinite rhythm of creation itself.